Think we're live? And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. And we're back. Thank you again for joining me today. So today is May 27, 2023 on a Saturday evening and it's starting to rain here. There's a reported typhoon coming our way here. So here's to hoping keep our fingers crossed. Hopefully, it doesn't do significant damage in the next few days. So we'll see. Anyway, so discussing in today's topic before I begin, I thought I was running my background segue audio which I normally do before the start of the stream, and I forgot to hit the streaming button, which I only realized a minute before the start of the show. But anyway, so since I was able to to click it, click the streaming button on time. Here we are today. So to discuss, there are some very interesting things to share. None more so. Our first one we're in terms of our main topic of if you're interested in buying an electric vehicle, there may be a positive or interesting development in terms of the battery, which is the main issue for many adopters or potential adopters in the future because of its limitation of its I won't say limited mileage, but obviously it's still not ideally conducive because of uh, the length or how far you can drive your electric vehicle. But obviously, as the technology improves, they're able to do that. But in this article, which is pretty interesting, an EV battery that you can use on average, a normal speed, that could last more than 100 years, which is pretty interesting. Now, how feasible is that, or is just all hype? We'll talk about that. Next is we'll be discussing an interesting part wherein one could never think that being a social media influencer or a YouTuber in this case might go to jail for doing illegal stuff. So we'll talk about that. What happened to that individual here? And next is we'll discuss the Xiaomi, how it tries to differentiate or not differentiate its product by copying a very popular brand, which is Apple here now. Obviously, there are pros and cons of copying a known brand or commodity, but there are also pitfalls of that because you don't create your own identity here. So we'll take a look if this is going to benefit Xiaomi in the long run, or this could hurt them in the long run. If Apple decides to go after them, would this significantly hurt their bottom line? So who knows? We'll see. Anyway, next is we'll discuss the pitfalls of trying to get the latest and greatest GPUs. I'm talking the issue that's been cropping up recently. If you've been following the news, the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4060 Ti with its 8 gigabit VRAM. And there was a review that was mentioned, and I'm sure you've seen lots of videos discussing the negative aspect because of its trying to market the 8 gigabytes as a cheaper one, while the 16 gigabit you have to gigabytes of VRAM, you have to pay an additional $100. Is it a cash grab for Nvidia? We'll take a look at that as well. And lastly, stay tuned for the last part when we discuss Samsung's continued innovation by offering a rollable screen. Now, is it something practical moving forward, or is it just a temporary fad that they're offering? But obviously, Samsung has been, slowly but surely providing different styles in terms of, from smartphones to maybe even laptops, desktops, and the sky's the limit as to what Samsung is able to do, since obviously they don't just make smartphones, but they produce home appliances, TVs, and whatnot to the mass market, which is pretty interesting. So anyway, so without further ado, so going to our first topic as mentioned. So the issue with EV vehicles is the how long the battery will last. Obviously the technology that's embedded with it. Can you lengthen the duration before you need to recharge it? And obviously the other part is how quickly can you recharge so that you can go on your merry way, similar to regular combustible engine. But in this particular article, a breakthrough has been reached, according to the driven.io, that the EV battery pack could last for as much as 130 years. So let's take a closer look. There you go. Or 2 million kilometers. So I think that's pretty significant if they are able to provide as advertised here. Now, obviously, as you can see here, based on the screenshot here, it's a Chinese company that's offering this new technology, which is pretty surprising, and it's not Tesla that's offering this technology here. So let's take a deeper dive here. So we're talking of a Chinese manufacturer named Goshon High Tech, which has announced a new battery pack that will go into mass production in 2024. That's a year away, where it says it can deliver the range up to 1,000 kilometers for a single charge and could last 2 million kilometers, which is pretty significant if they're able to provide that. Now, obviously, Xiaomi, which we'll be talking about later, was able to improve the charging capability by reducing the time frame. Normally, it takes minutes to hours to fully charge your phone, but with their technology that they're incorporating in their smartphones, you can quick charge your device in just minutes, tens of minutes, I think, right? But in this case, obviously, in a larger scale with EV packs on your vehicles can be problematic because obviously charging it too fast has its drawbacks, could degrade the battery life of your EV battery pack and could cause fire, which is never a good thing when you talk of lithium ion battery here. But according to the company, it mentions that the manganese dope L600 LMFP Astroino, Astroino, I don't know how you pronounce it, will be able to do 4,000 full cycles at room temperature. So that's ideally. And if you raise the temperature, it can only reach up to 1,800 cycles and over 1,500 cycles of 18-minute fast charging, which I think is pretty important. Obviously, it's still 18 minutes and can only, that's around 30% of its full capability. But again, obviously, if you can do that 18 minutes, let's say you're charging it in the city, in at home, or even in your offices where you're working, I think you could fully charge it in no time at all if it can do what it's advertising here. Now, this incredible high cycle number means that the battery could essentially last 2 million kilometers before it starts to deteriorate. Now, obviously, time can tell unless it's tested in the real world so that, we can actually find out if indeed it can do as it's mentioned here. So it mentions here that an average car travels around 15,000 kilometers. Could be more, could be less, but on average, it's 15,000 kilometers. So it would take roughly 130 years worth of average driving to reach the 2 million mark. Now, obviously, if you drive more of it, in a worst case scenario, I think you won't be driving the car north of 100 years, being able to reach 50 years, or 50 years, 10, 20 years of driving and maximizing it and still be able to use it for long term. Then I think that's kudos. I think that's a significant improvement in the technologies aspect here, and obviously coupled not just the longevity of the battery but faster charging cycles. I think it's the key for more potential EV owners to adopt, transition from from regular combustible engine to fully electric vehicles. But I'm still on the apprehensive side because I think there's still a middle ground in terms of using hybrid as the better form rather than solely relying on EV, because they have other issues that they need to iron out in terms of the reliance on software. So if you rely too much on technology, obviously they can lock you out, and obviously they're going to milk for every cent that they're offering right now, especially if you're Tesla. And then there's news of even Mercedes that they're offering a significant boost in car performance if you're willing to pay a subscription fee, which is, I think that's a big no-no for any consumer here. That once you pay for something, you expect full access to all features of a vehicle. Otherwise, why even pay for that amount? And it's not just a small amount, and it's a pretty significant amount of money here. Now, going back to the article. So, according to the Goshen High Tech company, saying that the battery single cell density is around 240 watts per kilogram, and that improvements in pack design have increased overall battery pack energy density to a point where 1000 kilometer range pack is possible with highly durable chemistry. Now, obviously, only time will tell if actually they could actually implement that, and obviously you need to do several tests to be able to determine its reliability and its effectivity combined. Then if they're able to do that, I think other car manufacturers will be able to adopt those technologies and obviously generate more sales and benefit the consumer in the long run, and not worry about do you have to keep on charging it, worrying where can I charge it, where can I plug it in, will it uh, last for the entire duration that I'm driving or going to wherever I'm supposed to be going here. Anyway, as mentioned by the company, according to the executive president, Dr. Cheng Kian, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name properly, a Stroino L600 LMFP battery cell, which has passed all safety tests, so it looks promising so far, has a weight energy density of 240 watts per kilogram, a volume energy density of 525 watts per liter, a life cycle of 4,000 times, which is 4,000 times that you can charge it at room temperature, and 1800 cycle times at high temperature. So if you notice, if it's very humid or very cold, could significantly decrease the performance of your battery cycles. But again, if it's able to sustain or outlive the or even at least reach at par the longevity of traditional combustible engine based on its usage, regardless if the cycle depletes by as much as half in severe weather, I think, or temperature, sorry, not severe weather. I think it's looking more promising for people who's on the fence on trying to consider or making it as a viable option moving forward here. Now, the company released a video explaining the new chemistry, which I will not bore you with the details, but so far it looks promising. But the key here is if they can actually implement it in current vehicles, especially in many Chinese electric vehicles in China, and then slowly it's being filtered out to other car manufacturers once they've started selling their technologies to other companies or other car manufacturers. Then we will be able to fully see the potential of such technology if it's actually a reality rather than just a vision that that's posted here in the article as mentioned here. So obviously, the continuous improvement in technology, the innovation is the key to everything, and obviously integration of not just the battery packs, but obviously the charging part. The infrastructure, I think, is the key, because it has many limitations still, and even in the United States, the superchargers that Tesla is implementing is not yet as far reaching as one would like, and obviously time will tell, and obviously the government has to be part of this involvement, and to support and to build those infrastructure is not cheap. So only time can tell if this is a long term benefit, or is just going to take even decades to even see the potential of what the EV market future would look like here. Anyway, so next is we mentioned that I mentioned earlier that how ironic is it that being a YouTuber nowadays could be a recipe of disaster if you're not careful on how you construct your content. In this case, if you use copyright content, and you could go to jail literally and figuratively. So this is not a joke, to say the least. And in this particular case, according to the article here at pcgamer.com, a Japanese YouTuber might be the first in the world arrested for posting gameplay clips. Now, obviously, copyrights could be considered gray area here. Now, obviously, once you bought the game, aren't you allowed for fair use to upload those contents online, whether there's an embargo or not? And obviously, there are main channels, other channels whose main content is to showcase the full a full playthrough of games and so forth, and yet they're not being charged for copyright issues here. So obviously, it depends on the situation. If it degrades the source material here, obviously the company has the right to go after those individuals who's trying to defame or destroy the image or the brand of the company here. But in this case, that was not the issue here. And as mentioned in this one, I knew it was illegal even as I was doing it. So knowing if it's illegal versus not, I would say not knowing is illegal, but you can use it for fair use at certain points can be problematic, especially for many companies who's trying to protect their IPs here, which is I think should be covered. That's why copyright is very important here. Anyway, let's look at the article here. So, a man has been arrested in Japan's Miyagi Prefecture on suspicion of violating copyright laws after he posted a video containing gameplay from the popular visual novel Steins Gate, Hyoku Renri no Darin. Okay. The Content Overseas Distribution Agency, or CODA, announced the arrest and said that the man had uploaded the video, which included the ending of the game without permission from the rights holder Nitro Plus, on top of which she had monetized the video and received ad revenue. Now, obviously, the key issue here is if you're using those videos to monetize it to make money out of it, then creates a lot of should the main IP holder or developer of the game here have a portion or the whole stake of the monetization here. Anyway, it goes on to mention that the same man is alleged to have uploaded other videos containing copyright content such as anime versions of Steins Gate and Spy Family. So this is not the first time this individual has done such illegal activity. So there's been a record. So obviously, you're doing this at your own peril, because obviously knowing what is allowed legally and what is not allowed should be clear cut here. Obviously, fair use should be allowed for discussion content wise, but just take a look at Nintendo. They're very protective of their IPs, sometimes to the detriment of the Nintendo community, because obviously playing their games to promote their games, which is in itself a marketing strategy that Nintendo doesn't have to do anything about it. But obviously they're sort of traditional in their mindset that they want to control what they can control because of their personal experience of how they started when they created the Mario franchise way back in the 1980s. I suggest you look at their story origins of how the game was conceived and what they tried to do, which is why they're very careful in terms of sharing those IPs online, especially for content creators. That's why you see content creators being strike down for whatever reasons that benefits the company here. But obviously, you have to look at both sides of the story here. But that's not the case in this matter here, as mentioned. Now, according to Coda, describes this video as fast content, part of a popular genre in Japan that condenses down a given work, anything from games to TV shows to movies. Now, often including captions or narration that summarize what's going on for the viewer. Now, natabare or natabare, I don't know how you pronounce it, is its own category within this of videos that show the details, ending, or plot twist. Now, obviously, that's not what it's intended from the main creators here. So that's good in a sense to increase its popularity, but obviously it's hard to monetize it if other creators are using it without any investment, or even buying the or licensing it, or some monetary payment that the company should benefit from it. Anyway, according Koda, says that the man has been uploading copyright since 2019, and it acted after the copyright holders complained. So it's not the first time, and obviously, according to Koda, it mentions that it is only acting on specifically malicious usages of gameplay footages, which I think the company should be allowed to protect their content, because could be used negatively against them, which could impact their sales moving forward. Here, it mentions in particular the act of combining only the movie scenes of a game with the story and editing so that the content of the game can be understood in a short time up to the ending, and posting it, or the act of extracting and posting only the ending scene has been viewed as a problem these days. Now, obviously, the YouTuber here is not the only one here. I've seen many content creators do that. I mean, uh not just the anime, the games, even movies, where they upload or summarize already the story. Obviously, the social media platform is already widespread, very popular to many viewers, and obviously trying to gain viewers in any shape or form, and in this case, even sharing the story, or the plot, or even the ending, gets a lot of views here, which is never good from the original creators here. And the act of posting only the ending scene can be viewed as a problem. So this action was taken because the gameplay video of the game was the targeted. This time was an extremely malicious example that matches the previous problem, as an example here. Now, obviously, and it goes way beyond here. Now, will there be more examples of takedowns and court battles to exemplify and to prove a point that there should be a limit as to what is allowed for fair use, to protect the developers of the game, or the storytelling, or the movies, whoever the case, who holds the IP here, and what should be allowed for content creators to reinterpret, to discuss, or however is it used. Can you use only a certain percentage? Can you show video clips of a certain percentage? But again, going back to the premise of gameplays, walkthroughs, wherein they showcase that in its entirety, I think it should be all about intent on how it's being presented. If it enhances the content of the games or the movies, I think it should be allowed. But if the question here, the problem, if it's a negative feedback where they're critiquing the game, are the companies allowed to take against it? I think that's more on for free speech, and you're allowed to voice your opinion here. So it's a very difficult balance here on how YouTube should handle this. There should be clear guidelines, and not just either side could easily take advantage of it, find loopholes so that they can monetize it either way, so that the other side is disadvantaged here. So only time can tell how this moves forward, because it's not going away anytime soon here. Anyway, segueing now to smartphones, we mentioned earlier that as companies, it's very competitive up there in the smartphone market. It used to be Nokia, then you have Apple, Samsung, used to be Huawei, then you have Vivo, Oppo, and even Xiaomi. But the question is, how do you differentiate one over the other brands? Because it's very highly competitive. There are top brands, mid-tier and lower tier brands, and in the case of Xiaomi, their strategy, which seems to work for them currently, but how's that going to last um, into the future? Only time can tell, because Xiaomi is trying to copy what Apple is offering, which I think is a good thing for Apple, because it complements that what they're doing is the right way, or trying to capture their market, but could be negative for Xiaomi, because obviously you don't create your own identity. So how do you distinguish a Xiaomi brand, or in this case smartphone, from a Apple iPhone? Now, obviously, Xiaomi is an Android-based smartphone compared to Apple's iOS system. So let's take a look here if this is going to benefit them in the long run, or will it backfire badly for Xiaomi here. And according to AndroidAuthority.com, it's high time Xiaomi stop copying Apple's iOS or its template, how it looks and feels when you're using its UI here. So as you can see here visually, obviously the phones are different in terms of size and design, but the UI itself, the experience wise. So if you're an Apple user switching to an Android device, and Xiaomi would be the easiest path for that. But obviously, if I'm Apple, I'm not okay with it, because I'm losing market share here, and obviously being a copycat company, then obviously you want to protect your IPs in terms of, can you protect the user interface here, or is it fair game for anyone to copy, unless you're copying the exact code, which is obviously different from iOS versus Android here. I could be wrong here, but let's take a look further here. So, according to the article, Xiaomi was one of the many Chinese company brands copying Apple iOS way back in the early 2010s, and this was an understandable trend at the time. It created a familiar experience for former iPhone users while also giving people a similar experience without paying a premium. Obviously, the price is significantly cheaper than the iPhone counterparts. So, if you're looking for a cheaper alternative and obviously a different platform, then I think it would make sense. But obviously, it can only go so far as to what Xiaomi will do, but it creates a identity crisis in a sense, because if you're trying to be more like Apple, then you're not Xiaomi anymore, right? Or I could be wrong here. But obviously, some people will tolerate it, but others will not. Obviously, again, at the end of the day, consumers will dictate if what they're doing is sustainable or not, or otherwise, unless Apple does something about it, go to court, sue the company for trying to copy their UI or proximity here, or they could always argue that it's potentially stealing their potential customers, and they have to protect their IP, not just the logo, but the feel and the look of their devices here. So let's see here. According to so how does the MIUI copy iOS? So let's see what are the many ways here that they're able to do that. So as you can look visually, so it looks somewhat different, but it feels similar also in terms of the shades of color, the blue template here, and the designs of the icons, whether it's rounded shape and it's rectangular or square shape here. So it looks somewhat familiar here. So you can see here the left uh, design here is from Apple's. You have Xiaomi's on the right side here. So it looks similar. So it's hard to distinguish one over the other here. And you go to the settings tab now, so you can see here again it looks similar, but again, if I were to check on my Samsung phone under the settings tab, sure, I'm in dark mode, so it looks different, but the icons, they have some similarities, but there are subtle differences also. But obviously, if you have a big brand like Apple and Samsung, you have to make sure you're distinct from one over the other, so that the consumer doesn't is not confused as to, oh, I think this is an Apple phone, and yet you're using a Samsung smartphone here, and vice versa here. As you can see here, iOS on the left side and then the Xiaomi on the right side. I mean, there's subtle differences in terms of the graded background, but in terms of the text and the icons, looks somewhat similar, right? And then you also have here the camera app. Obviously, I don't know if you can uh, protect this IP here in terms of its template here. Obviously the text, the font, and it's how it's being presented, somewhat similar, but there are subtle differences. I don't know if Apple can make a case here. And then you also have dial strappings used to, again, it looks similar, but I don't know if it's a big deal for obviously the fact that they're on different platforms is this distinction enough. So can Xiaomi copy the template, the feel or the look of iOS so they can, sort of steal, but it's hard to tell here. But I haven't owned a Xiaomi, so I'm not so sure. But based on the looks, yeah, it gets quite confusing here. Anyway, is it should it be a big deal? So copying features is usually a two-way street in the mobile space. Obviously, it's not just Xiaomi who does that. As a various brands frequently crib from each other. In fact, Apple pinch two Xiaomi hardware features, so it has happened in reverse. For the iPhone 14 launch, copying the overall aesthetic shows a disappointing lack of originality, which goes to show the maturity of the smartphone market, that you can only do so much, iterate in terms of the design, the hardware and software part, and obviously it gets disappointed and asking you to pay an exorbitant amount of money, and you get very minuscule improvement, which is, I'm not encouraged anymore to buy the latest and greatest, since my phone is still working for a few years. So I'll use it until it breaks down before I buy a new one here, whether it's Oppo, Google, Pixel, or Samsung smartphone device here. So we'll see if if I was going to do anything about here. Anyway, so continuing with our discussion. So as mentioned regarding GPUs here now, I made special exception here regarding the issue of the NVIDIA GeForce 4060 RTX 4060 Ti, which is started to be a great alternative to the previous generation of the RTX 3070. But the problem is, obviously, if you're expecting to buy a new GPU, there are more demanding requirements and future demanding requirements that could hamper your perspective if you were to buy this particular GPU. Specifically, from many of the reviewers who were bashing this one because of its limitation in terms of its, there are two models that they were offering, the 8 gigabytes VRAM versus 16 gigabyte VRAM, because obviously future games are going to demand for more horsepower, not just in the GPU but also in the VRAM here, the cache, so that it can handle better performance in this case. And obviously, NVIDIA is trying to milk that by offering a different distinction by offering a cheaper one of sorts, which was priced at $400, and then $100 difference for the 16 gigabyte VRAM, which they're trying to make a compelling case, but obviously based on the reviews, they're getting receiving backlash because of the monetization that they're trying to get away with. And obviously, if consumers were to dictate it, don't buy it, and provide them with the negative reviews or feedback, so that they know that not to piss off your main customers if you're trying to offer this product on a yearly basis here. So let's take a look on this article. According to techspot.com, NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4060 Ti, the 8 gigabit review here. So the 8 gigabit VRAM at $400 is simply a no-go for this article. So let's take a look at its uh, limitations by comparing it with the other GPUs in the current market here. So here, in terms of gameplay on Fortnite using 1080p, which is the basic resolution for many gamers here. Now you can see here there are different GPUs here from GeForce RTX. You have AMD's Radeon RX GPU. So you have the top tier of RTX 4070 Ti, which produces close to 200, a little over 200 frames FPS. But for the RTX 4060 Ti, is somewhat in the middle of the pack here. But if you look closely, it's comparable to the older, or what I'm currently using, the RTX 3070, which is slightly better by a few frames, at 134 frames. So is it better to buy the newer one, which tends to be slower or lower in performance? Again, it would depend on your criteria, but we're just making some comparisons here. So it's better than an Radeon RX 6700 XT, better than an GeForce RTX 3060, 2060, obviously by a wide margin here. And then if you compare that, if you bump up the resolution to 1440p, which I think should be the standards moving forward for any latest games and the GPUs, if they're going to say that they're the best of the best from the previous generation, not just the 1920p or 1880p. You can see here the RTX 4060 Ti is close to 90 frames per second. Uh, where in the 3070 is slightly better at 100 frames per second here. Should you buy it? Obviously, if I'm looking at the numbers here, on average, I tend to hold on the RTX 3070 and not replace it unless you're setting up a new PC here. And again, I would strongly suggest, depending on your budget, I think that the key here is, I think others have mentioned this already, that if you're planning to buy a GPU, if it would depend on your budget, you buy, if you're setting up a new PC, buy the latest, most expensive GPU that you can afford, that can last you for several years. Now, if you're trying to upgrade your current GPUs, depending on your use case, whether you're casual gamer, whether you're a content creator, or a combination of those, or for leisure, whatever the case may be, or for work, then that would depend on the requirement here. Do you need a superior GPU, or a mid-tier GPU, or lower tier GPU would be sufficient for your use case? Obviously, if you buy a very expensive GPU and you're not going to maximize it, then it would be a waste of your money here. So finding the right money for value for the use case that you're considering is the whole point. But going back to the article here, as mentioned here, but in terms of the 4060 Ti, it's somewhere in the middle of the pack here, and which is could be problematic if you're trying to consider. Obviously, if you compare it for the 4060 to the 4070 Ti, which is significantly more, double the price, you'll get close to double the frame rates also. Again, it would depend on your use case here. Now, if you're buying a new setup, you're going to have a new setup, if you're considering, if you can afford the latest and the greatest, then I think you should go for it. But if you're limited in budget, I think you should scale back, maybe look for second hands, for cheaper ones, for the RTX 3070, 3080, or even the 3090, if you can find one in the second hand market here in the country, or in your particular country here. Now, looking at its price, let's scroll slightly lower. Where's the price here? Uh, they have several games mentioned here, so I would provide the link later on, so you can check out the many games here that you might be interested in purchasing here. So we'll take a look now at the cost per frames, if it's good for value in terms of purchasing the 4060 Ti, or should you consider other GPUs for your next purchase here. So you can see here for the 4060 Ti, which costs around $300, which is the cheapest. And then you have the RTX 4060 Ti, which cost $400. As you can see here, the frames cost per frames is around $5. So if you look at the value here, you want to look for something more inexpensive here that can give you more value here. Where was do they have the 3070 here? No, they don't. But if you look at the cost per value for the RTX 3060, it's slightly more expensive, but dollars more difference. But for the RTX 4070, it's not that far off from the 4060 Ti. And again, this can be confusing if you're looking for the value here. That's why you want to look at different factors when you're making a consideration on making that purchase here, in terms of when are you buying it and what are you buying it for. Then that would limit your choices as to what you should consider. And obviously, availability in your market is a main consideration. And obviously, in different markets, they might charge a more premium price if there's limited availability on your geographic location here. As in the case here, when I bought my 3070, I think I practically almost paid for 50-60% more of its MSRP, which is obviously at the time was during, right after the lockdown during the pandemic at 2021 when I bought it. And it was a big decision because without the GPU I couldn't have set up the PC, so I had to make sure that I had the GPU available at the time, so I had to pay premium price. But if I waited a few more months, I couldn't have set up my PC what I'm using right now, and I would have to buy double or even triple the price, which is, I think it was a worthwhile endeavor at that time. But if you're considering buying it for today, I think you look for the best price within your budget, if it's the latest one, and see if the performance is significantly better, in my opinion, for cost for value. Because if it's not being able to run the latest or even future games moving forward, then I think that's going to be a downgrade of purchasing your GPUs here. Leave your comments if you think there's a better way of considering what GPUs you should buy, depending on the use case that you're considering here. Anyway, segueing again now to Samsung, we mentioned earlier, Samsung is focused in many aspects in their plethora of businesses, not just in smartphones but in appliances, but in different facets. But in this case, they're leveraging their production of TV screens, and now they're able to offer a rollable screens that is OLED, and could be have big potential in terms of its use case, in particular in the health. There's a health sensing OLED here, so it could be a portable screen that acts like a scroll, maybe a roll up banner of sorts, and that could be an OLED. And it mentions that an OLED that senses blood pressure, which is pretty interesting, if you ask me. So let's take a closer look here. So again, according to techspot.com, what they're offering is exhibiting something new. So if you look at the photo here, that it could be like an advertisement on the go. Instead of just having one screen, you could put practically anything on the screen, and could be used for commercial use or even for presentations, whatnot. I think there's a lot of applications here. But let's read further here. So Samsung unveiled new projects and upcoming foldable screens. Now, obviously, foldable screens is what they're known for with their smartphone devices for the Galaxy Fold and the Flip. And they presented at the SID Display Week 2023. So the company is trying to make portable screens more mobile, increase the flexibility of foldable screen devices, and explore the health sensing potential of OLED. I didn't know that OLED could do that, or possibly could do that. So a new tool will also help customers navigate Samsung's OLED selection. So Samsung Display showcased a range of unique prototypes in Los Angeles this week. The exhibit included a screen that can roll up like a paper. So I think that's more for commercial use. In terms of marketing, I think, excuse me, and an OLED that can sense a person's health. Now, how they're able to do that is pretty interesting here. Excuse me. So according to the Samsung rollable flex that they're calling, can stretch by a factor of 5 from 2 inches to around 10 inches. So it's not that big, but obviously they're starting from their smartphone Z Folds. The demo unit rolls the tablet size screen like a scroll into a form factor similar to a phone, which could likely fit in a user's pocket. It's unclear what the rollable flex maximum size could be, but if they were able to extend that, there's a big excuse me, big possibility in terms of application wise. Could be. But the technology could make larger displays like monitors and TV easier to transport and install. I think I'm not interested more so in the rollable, what do you call this? Rollable screens, but I think having a touchscreen application for all monitors should be incorporated moving forward, because I'm using a Dell XPS. I enjoy having a touchscreen, obviously a high definition 4K resolution or whatever the resolution you prefer. But having the touchscreen ability, obviously you could use the mouse to scroll the screen. But if you're sitting close enough in the screen, flipping it up with your smartphone, with your tablet, laptops, and I think it makes sense for all monitor screens should have that capability. Now, obviously, that's going to jack up the price even more, but I think that's an added feature that I think everyone would highly appreciate. And obviously, with the improvement of technology, with what Samsung is doing, and obviously even hopefully LG and other screen manufacturers moving forward could drop the price so that make it more affordable. Should be standard practice moving forward here. Anyway, the company also demonstrated its other flexible screen technologies. It unveiled at CES, like the Flex In and Out, Flex Hybrid, and Slidable Flex Solo. They have those weird names. Anyway, similar to how the Galaxy Fold devices that we're using currently here. But what's interesting here is the OLED screens that can OLED screens for multiple health related and biometric function. I don't know how are they able to do that. So it mentioned it incorporates a light sensing organic photodiode embedded in the panel, which detects reflected OLED light. Interesting. So the new tech can offer a new way to measure health-related functions. For example, the contraction and relaxation of blood vessels in the finger affect how OLED light reflects. So touching the screen with two fingers, the device can measure heart rate, blood pressure, and stress levels. If they could do that, I think they could also implement that in smartphone devices, I think, in the future, if that's the case, right? So a 77-inch Samsung QD OLED TV and a 49-inch QD OLED ultra-wide monitor also appeared at the event. So it would be interesting if they're able to incorporate more technology, but obviously the cost would be significant. But if it can provide us feedback in terms of health, so you can see right away if your heart rate is going up, should you go to see a doctor or go to hospital, you need an emergency and whatnot. I think it's a good addition, but obviously we'll see how it's going to be rolled out. Or I think Samsung should be at the forefront here because they've been trying to push the foldable screens, and they need to use the technology to maximize its returns since inception, and marketing it for different applications now with the OLED technology here. So only time will tell, but it's pretty interesting, and obviously technologies are still improving, hopefully for the better rather than for the worst here. Anyway, that's it for this week. Come back again on hopefully with regular schedule on Fridays. But if not, it's Friday-ish or Saturday-ish. It's either of the 2 days. I've been a busy bee this past few days. But anyway, so thank you again for joining me today. If you have any questions, leave your comments down below, and I'll try to get back to you. So if you find this discussion interesting, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button to help continue supporting the channel to help it grow. So we're trying to reach 4,000 subscribers here. Anyway, I'll see you again in the next one. Catch me on other videos, whether on Monday checklist or on business updates during Wednesdays. As always, I'll see you in the next one. Take care.